G'day everybody, it's Joe Sweeney here from Storyweaver Games, and by now I hope that you have labeled your map and you've probably got it ready to actually put on the gaming table, and that's absolutely fantastic. But in this advanced tutorial, I'm going to show you how to go beyond the standard things that are built into Campaign Cartographer and create new tools just for your own use. And what we're going to do is make extensive use of layers and sheets and some of the other functions within Campaign Cartographer to create political borders on our map. And I want these political borders to be quite hard edged and have a color that fades into the various territory. And this is a really useful technique. It's very usable for a whole range of other effects, but for this particular piece of tutorial, I think it's going to give you a lot of value in understanding how sheets work. So the first thing that I'm going to do is turn off that grid line. So I click on my layers here and find my square grid, and I'm going to hide that so I can't see it. Great. Now the reason that I've turned that off is I don't want it to get in the way while I'm working. The next thing I'm going to do is create a layer for my political borders. So if I click on this, you'll actually see that there is a political/borders layer on here. I don't want to use that one because that one is used for a particular set of symbols in Campaign Cartographer, and I don't want to get them confused. So I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call it Political Borders Custom. Click on it. You can see it's been added there. I'm going to select that layer, and then I'm going to freeze everything else. That basically means I can't edit other things on my map. I'm now pretty much limited to working in this layer, which is what we want to do. We want to protect the rest of the map while we continue working from it. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new sheet. Now, the difference between layers and sheets. Layers are how you organize things on your map. Sheets are how you apply artistic effects. So anything that is on a particular layer, we can turn on, turn off, move as a whole, and so forth. Anything that is on a sheet will have a common set of attributes attributed to it. For example, when I open this up, we see text, and all text has a glow. Earlier on in the tutorial, when we were adding the grids and the scales to our map, if we come down to that one, where is it? Grid, there it is. We saw transparency and blur. The other thing that sheets also do, as we saw earlier, is they determine the order in which things are drawn on your map. So anything down the bottom here is going to be drawn on top of everything else. They stack down. We're going to need to create a new sheet for our political borders. So I'm going to click Add here, and I'm going to call this Political Borders Custom. I'm naming it exactly as the same as the layer to help remind me of what I'm working on. I'm also going to move it up into above the border here. In fact, I'm going to move it, I'm going to keep moving it up. I think that symbols should be able to flow over this, and so should roads, and so should rivers. Actually, pretty much where that political borders lies there. Excellent. Okay, so now we have our political borders custom. I have not spelt that right. Let me go and correct that for us. Rename borders. There we go. I know I'm trying to be a little bit perfectionist, but I am heavily dyslexic. Okay, political borders, we're all set to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about a color for my first kingdom, and I'm just going to zoom in on where I want to draw some of these kingdoms. I want a kingdom to be based along here, and then another kingdom to be down here, and then a third kingdom to come up here. I'm going to make the first kingdom, this kingdom in here, have a red border. So I'm going to change my color to red. Now, before drawing this really on the map, I'm just going to do a demonstration. So I've got this border here. If I now selected this tool here, which is the straight polygon tool, and I was to draw a little area like that, it hasn't actually drawn it correctly because I forgot to change my fill style. So I'm going to undo that. The fill style overrides the color. I'm going to make the fill style brush patterns solid. Okay, let's try that one again. There you go. Lovely and red. Now, obviously, if I was to draw that over my area here, I'm not going to see anything of the map, so that's not going to work for me. So I'm now going to apply sheet effects to this border area, or this kingdom area, to make it so that it only shows a border. Now watch carefully. I'm going to go to Sheets, then I'm going to go to my Political Borders Custom. I'm going to click on Add. I'm going to select Edge Fade Inner, this one here. The edge width, that's how many miles the edge will be. And I want this to be relatively small. So I'm only going to make it for the moment 3 miles. The inner opacity, that means how bright is the interior. I want it to be 0. I don't want anything in the middle, but the outer opacity, I'm going to make that, say, 85. I'm going to use map units for this. I'm going to click on OK, click on OK. Now when the redraws, you can see I've got this drawn here. It's made it a little bit too pale. So let me go back here, modify this. Maybe we'll make that 10 and see what happens. Okay, it's starting to get about right. You can see I'm experimenting with it out here. Let me modify that just a little bit more. I think that's a little bit too harsh. So I click on Edit, Edge Fade. I'm going to drop that down to, say, 75. And I'm going to make that, say, 8, which is what it was to start with. So yeah, there you go. That's probably about the shape that I want. Okay, now that you've got the basics of your of how your border is going to be drawn in place, it comes time to automating this. Now, you could try just drawing these borders on by using, say, a multi-poly tool and just drawing them on your map. But the problem is you don't get that wonderful trace function that we had previously. And as a result, trying to draw your kingdom border near the edges of the map is going to be impossible, or very, very difficult, I should say. Now, the other part of that is that it's cumbersome. You have to manually set the layers and the political borders and so forth. Wouldn't it be great if we could make this border drawing as automated as drawing the swamp was when we did this work up here? And it absolutely is. So we're going to create a new tool. To do that, we're going to right-click on the default terrain tool. We're going to select the swamp tool. Oops. Yep. Just select it like so. Then come back to it. And then click Advanced. We've got the swamp tool selected. We're going to inherit all of the properties of that tool, and then we're going to modify it for what we're working on now. So we're going to click on New to create a new tool. We're going to call it Terrain Default, and then we're going to call it Political Border. Okay? Right. We now can start editing. Make sure that is selected. We can now start selecting this. The draw method is, let's leave it as fractal for the moment. We're going to click on outline. We don't want this to have an outline, otherwise it's going to draw an outline around something which is effectively an outline. Then we go to properties. We're going to use the current color. That will change. We're going to change our fill style from being a swamp, which is a graphical fill style, to being solid. Solid, 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 solid. There it is, solid. We're going to change the layer, where it lies down, where it's placed, and we're going to change that, of course, to our political borders layer. And importantly, very importantly, we want to change this to the exact spelling, political borders custom, of our sheet. Now, if you don't do that, it's going to get the wrong sheet and you're not going to get the right effects. So we've got all of that set up. I'm going to click on OK. So now you can see that's red, so it's drawn it in red, all looking good. Let's save that now, and we're pretty much all set to draw. Okay, we're set to now use our new tool that we've just created. Very exciting. Click on the menu, and then we're going to select Political Border, which is the tool that we've just created. Starting here, I'm going to draw along where these folks think that their border lies, all the way down to Wandi, which is the edge of what they think their empire is, and coming on down. Now, I can select the trace tool here, and I'm going to select, and I'm just going to zoom in for this because I want to make sure I get this right. I'm going to select in there. It hasn't actually selected that. Why not? Little interesting thing, you need to be able to modify, you need to have that unfrozen in order to select the element. I'm going to start my map there, and I'm going to draw along up here, just zoom out a little bit. So there was a little gotcha, and I don't think these guys particularly want to own the fire mountains up there. There you go. If we redraw that, bingo, now we have got our border along our map. I think that this should actually be running over the top of those mountains. So we're going to now click on this again, and we're going to move this down the list. So it sits above. There we go. Excellent. So now we have a lovely border for our first kingdom. Let's now draw the border for the second kingdom, which cuts all the way down to here. So we'll just move this along a little bit more. I'm going to change the color, and we'll make this one blue. Select the political borders. Notice now how easy it is to, you don't have to go through all that process of manipulating things. And we're just going to move our mouse all the way down to here. Go to trace, select a point somewhere in our map, and then move it along all the way here. At this point, I'm going to come up to the edge of that, trace again, trace, select this map, start there, and move myself all the way up to here. So, and then click there, and finally, I can just right click, and it flows perfectly aligned to that border, perfectly aligned my coastline. And if I refresh, now what we have noticed here is because this sheet is the same as this sheet, it is assumed that it doesn't need to fill in this area. It's actually blended in that area. So how do we get around that? We actually need to create a new tool and a new sheet. When two items of the same sheet touch each other, they effectively become the same thing. So we actually need a sheet and a tool for red, and a sheet and a tool for blue, and we need a sheet and a tool for yellow, and a sheet and a tool for green, and so forth, if we're going to get those borders to connect. Again, a lot easier to show you than to talk through it. So what do we do about this? Well, let's start with our sheets first and foremost. I'm going to click here and bring up my sheets. I'm going to change the name of this sheet. So I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call it Political Borders Red. Okay, the first thing we're going to do. Then I'm going to add another sheet. I'm going to call it Political Borders Blue. Now this one, I want to just move it up so it's next to my previous one. Notice this one is Edge Fade Inner. And if we look at those properties, just to remind ourselves of what they were 8 and 75 map units. So let's make this one add edge fade, oops, not edge fade outer, edge fade inner, that one, 8, 0, 75. Excellent. Okay. And we're going to add another layer, and we'll call this one yellow, because that will be for the yellow. Click on it, OK. Again, move it up. Click on that, and we will go add edge fade inner. Okay. So now we've got the 3 political borders created. These two, because we renamed the border, are now both sitting on the political borders red. So we want to move this one to the blue to see if this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this function here, the change properties. I'm going to select both of them by doing that. There we go. So they're both selected. And then holding down the control key, I'm going to unselect the red one. And then I'm going to click do it. I'm going to change the political border to being political border blue. Let me just bring that up a little bit so that we can see it. Political borders blue. So that means that this one, which is blue, is now going to be on a separate sheet. And if we refresh, you'll now see that that has in fact enabled us to see the border between these two pieces because they're separate sheets. They have different processing, which is exactly perfect. But that's useful, but it's still very cumbersome. So what I now want to do is create a tool to differentiate between the red, the blue, and pretty soon the yellow. So I'm going to click on the default terrain tool here. We're going to select the political border, which is fine. I'm going to click advanced. We're going to click on this one here. We're going to go new, and we're going to call it political border red. I'm actually going to make that just political red because it might be a little hard to read in this list since political border is right near the end there. Okay. I'm going to click on OK. I'm then going to modify the properties so that instead of using the current color, it's going to use red. Got that? So now this is a new tool which will be always red. The other thing I'm going to do while I'm in here is change this. Instead of political borders custom, I'm going to change that to red to make sure it goes on the right sheet. That's it. That's all you need to do. Let's create a new, well, we'll save it. Let's create a new one from this, and we'll call this one blue. And like we did before, we go in there, we change the, actually, I won't change that one. That's the one that we want, blue, nice blue color. And we change the sheet that it drops down onto being blue. Save that, new one, and let's call this one yellow. No surprises there. And guess what color we're going to make it? You got it. We're going to make it a beautiful yellow, but I'm going to make it a slightly goldish yellow to make it pop a little bit more from there. That's probably the right yellow that we want. We're also going to change that to yellow. So now we have 3 new drawing tools. Whoops, yes, we want to save that. That we can automate our borders with. So I'm just going to click on save here, and let's now draw the yellow border in. To do that, I'm going to click on here. I'm going to make sure that I've got political border yellow drawn. I'm going to start my drawing. I'm going to come to the close to the edge of there, and I'm going to push T for trace. I'm going to select somewhere in the middle of that. There we go. That's been selected, I believe. Good. Select right up on that corner. Draw my border along just to near the edge of here. Move off it. Select trace again for our ocean spot. Start right on the edge. Draw all the way up. And then come in through here and finally finish it like so. So that worked, didn't it? You can now see that's beautiful. Now you can continue making tools like this for different colors. I'm just going to put another, in fact, I will do one more. I'm going to create one for green now. So I'm going to right click there. I'm going to go to advanced, whoops, right click, advanced, go to my borders yellow. I'm going to go new. So I'm inheriting this borders yellow, and I'll call this one green. Properties, let's make that a lovely strong green color like so. Change this to green. Now we don't yet have a political borders green, so we need to make sure that we get that in before we do anything else. Oh, did I make one already? Let me just take a look. No, I didn't make one. So it's made it automatically for me. Okay, and the very last thing that we should probably do is make sure that our political borders green actually has the effects that we want. So I'm going to go to political borders green because that was added automatically. There are no effects in there, and I'm going to make that same settings as all the others. Now, let's draw in our large political border for that other kingdom. I'll just zip through this because I know that you've seen me working with this stuff before, so not too much of a need to go into too much detail with this one. I'm going to zoom in here so I can come to the edge of that. Then I can mark this as my next trace pattern, starting from here, trace all the way in along to about here, just before the edge. I'm going to now trace a new pattern onto this one. Start from there. I just zoom out a little bit so I can see this. So you can see multiple trace patterns. And then we'll bring it up to here. There's the green. Lovely. So that's it. I better just delete that rogue element there. From this tutorial, you've now seen that you can create your own tools that can rapidly speed up your mapping. And these tools are reusable. If you save those tools, anytime you use the tools associated with this particular mapping symbol set, you will have those tools available to you. So it's incredibly useful. Over time, it's very likely you'll build up your own tool sets. Things like borders, certain types of fills that you might want. It just makes things so much faster. It's great for overland mapping. These techniques work for overland mapping, but they also work for dungeon mapping and all forms of other mapping. So don't think of Campaign Cartographer as just a set box that you have to do everything that they tell you. No, it's actually a framework. It's a set of tools that you can build upon and create your own tools and really speed up your mapping. That's really it for this tutorial series. There is obviously more things I can show you, and there will be some bonus lessons after this as well that deal with touching up your map and so forth. But at this point, you are now pretty much a master mapper of overland mapping. You can create almost any fantasy map you want using the techniques of this program. So please, get in touch with me on Facebook, www.facebook.com/StoryweaverGames. I know I've spoken to you a lot about that before. And please, show me the maps that you're making. I really want to see them. And I'm more than happy to give you tips and tricks and other things. The more questions you ask me also, the more likely it is I'm going to be able to make other little mini bonus training tutorials around this set of tutorials that will teach you some additional things. So please keep those questions coming. The source files for this map will also be available on the download, so make sure you grab those. That's it. Look, I've really enjoyed making this set of tutorials. I hope that you get a lot out of this. There's so much more to discover in Campaign Cartographer and in mapping in general. I look forward to seeing what you've got. Cheers. Bye.